So we start off with a Stromberg Carlson. This is very similar to the previous one I did and put a Bluetooth in and it sounded awful. So that might be some of the bad capacitors that I'd put in it. But we'll see in the long term when I have a look at it. So this one is a dual band one as opposed to the previous one, which is a single band. This is the tone control here. And this is the band switch here. It does work and it sounds beautiful, but I won't plug it in and turn it on because of, well, copyright. These knobs are not original. I think this one, maybe, no? Yeah. There it is. I'll try and find some proper knobs. Maybe this one is original, but I don't think so. But anyway, we'll find some knobs for it eventually. And the prices of knobs are through the roof at the moment, judging by the prices people are offering for maybe 3 or 4 knobs. $100, $120, that sort of thing. So yes, okay, on to the next radio. Next up we have this classic radio, and it's branded classic and has a beautiful little decal on the top of it. It is quite a stunning little radio. Well, it's not so little, but it's a table radio. It wasn't all that expensive, really. It's pretty crusty inside, though. It needs a good clean-up because it's obviously been in a smoker's house, and everything is that sort of browny colour. It's a 2-band with tuning and volume, but doesn't have a tone control on it. But it sounds pretty reasonable, actually. It's probably around about the time of the Second World War, late 30s. I don't believe classic radio survived the war, but I might be wrong there. So let's have a bit of a look at it. The tuning works, as does the band switch. And the volume, of course, there's no on-off switch on it, being pre-war. Very nice looking radio. Here's a quick view inside, and as you can see, it's pretty brown. So it's obviously been in a very heavy smoker's house. The 6v6 is almost opaque, but yeah. It's got a very nice, got a handheld mic here, so I don't know how, yeah. It's got a very nice phenolic, I think, or maybe transfer, oh, it's not even a transfer, it's a plate. So that's a semi-transparent plate. Next up we have a slightly pre-war STC, or maybe a little bit later, I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked these up on the computer yet, so I don't know the dates. But this is actually really nice. I'll try and lighten it up a little bit so you can see the grain pattern in it. This is the grain pattern. It's like a dark chocolate brown in reality, but it looks absolutely stunning. It has been restored. It's not the original dial cloth, and I'm not sure about the knobs again, but it is a very nice radio. It's got a curve to the top, so it comes up here and then it curves over. So very nice. And it looks absolutely beautiful when it's lit up at night. All those colours, as does that other one, the classic radio, I think it was. Was it classic? Yes, the classic. So we'll move on. This is a 115 Phillips. It's pretty much the same as the other 3 which I've been battling with over the last few months, except this one is painted this creamy colour, sort of like white chocolate. This is the original colour. They did paint them in the factory. So it's got a brown Bakelite base and this creamy white over the top of it. The knobs are white as well. This one fortunately does work. I spoke to the previous owner beforehand and he assured me that it did work. So I'll hopefully be able to work out the values of the IF coils and the capacitors that are in them, because these are a sealed capacitor coil unit and they can't be fixed apparently. They're a honeycomb sort of arrangement. So I might rig something up to replace it. I have been doing a bit of research online and I believe it is possible. So let's have a look around the back of it. So this looks pretty original in the back, although some of the valves have been changed because they've got paper labels on them. These are the IF cans that go bad, and as I said before, they have a honeycomb arrangement in them, and they're apparently, well, they're slightly adjustable, but they're fixed in the factory, so there's no adjustment on them. And the alignment is done with those little tiny wire coil things where you pull it off and lengthen it or shorten it. Now, these look identical, but in fact they're not. They used a generic case, and the top one is an operatic and the lower one is a Tasma. The lower one I picked up very cheap because it's missing a front slat and it also has a bit of damage at the back, which has been very badly repaired. The top one is also damaged and it has a crack from there up here. So, and it's also missing its knobs, and that might be a crack, or no, it's a chip. Yes, it's chipped, but that's not a problem. Both similar inside, but there's some differences apparently. So this is the operatic. This is the Tasma 1000, and I'm not sure the model number on the operatic or operatone. It's an operatone, not an operatic. Very confusing. So this will be a bit of a project. Both glasses are nice. So we might be able to make one radio out of it, or we might be able to make two if I can find some suitable knobs. There was about 3 others in spectacular condition, very nice condition, and they went for a lot more than these ones, these two. And there was also, I think, a green one, and it went for a very, very high amount of money, more than what I was willing to pay for one of these. But one day I'll get into the more expensive coloured bodied ones, I guess. Next up we have a Phillips 100, a little tiny radio. Well, tiny for the time. Not much to say about this one really. It does work, and I just had to have it for my collection. It's not all that pretty, but it's quite respectable. It doesn't look as nice as the Model 112 with the square and the dial sticking out the top, but this is probably a much more practical setup. The layout of the circuit is the same, and the chassis is much the same as the 112 as well, I think. But obviously there's going to be variations in there because the dial is located on the front instead of the top, and the control knobs are on the front instead of the side. Okay, that's a bit better. You can see the cabinet in its all its little tiny glory. This one is a little nipper, HMV, or Yeah, and it's more of an English design set, I think. In fact, it is an English design. Very nice, desirable set. Quite shallow, not much depth to the cabinet. And it was made around about the same time as the Phillips 100. The Phillips 100, as I took it off the table and put it down, it's got a speaker dated 1947, I think. So that's a little bit earlier than I thought they were made. But this one, I haven't plugged it in yet, but it is absolutely beautiful the way it's been polished up. Obviously someone spent a lot of time with the buffer. It does have some minor scratching there. And surprisingly, I didn't pay all that much for it. The coloured versions, the cream and the greens, and I'm not sure about whether they made a red one or not, but they go for a lot more money. This was well under $100. In fact, all of these radios were under $100, except for the one I'm going to show you at the very end. In the post-war period, things became a lot more, smaller, and batteries became a lot smaller too. With the advent of the 1 series valves, you could make very tiny sets. This isn't tiny. In fact, it's larger than the Phillips tinnies that I have, especially the last model one, which is quite a bit smaller. It's an interesting set. I don't know much about these sets. It is an AC/DC set, and someone has put a modern IEC plug on it, 3-pin job. I'll have to open it up and see what's going on in there. Obviously you don't want to plug it in and have it blow up on me or electrocute myself. It's got cable ties through the top to stop it opening up, I guess. I do have another contemporary set, or two of them actually. This one is the Technico pacemaker. Just zoom back a little bit so you can see the top of it. Yep, there we go. And it's a little bit smaller. This is an American designed cabinet. I'm a bit wary about taking it apart because I think it's going to be a bit of a nightmare working out the dial pointer. I have two of these. They're in pretty bad condition. This one is... actually it is bad condition. So this one is cracked at the bottom, and the top is got a big chunk out of it. It's a bit better than the other one that I have, which is pretty much smashed up, but it does have the handle on it and it does have the knobs. So one day I'll try and make a complete set out of it. I don't know how this will clean up. It might polish up all right. As I said, they were both freebies. So I didn't get this at Saturday's auction, but as a comparison, here it is. This is a AWA Radiola 455. I think it's an MY. These are nothing to write home about, but they do perform quite well. They're a modern set. Released in the late 1950s, early 1960s. They do look very nice when they're cleaned up. I had a yellow one, and perhaps stupidly I gave it away to a friend as a Christmas birthday present, and it looked really good, and I thought because they were pretty common at the time and they were around everywhere, but not in the yellow so much. And then since then I haven't seen one for sale at all. So this one is a sort of a bluey grey colour, and the faceplate is, or should be, bright white, although it doesn't look that way with this lighting. And it's another South Australian one. So I've got the other one which I did a couple of weeks ago, and it doesn't have the actual dial on it. That was the blue one, which I made out of the 2 chassis and 3 or 2 faceplates and whatever else. That's a 5 valve model, but I like these ones. They're very pretty, plain, nice design. They don't have a tone control on them though, so what you get is what you get. They were designed for a kitchen really, so we'll move on. Next we have a Pi Ranchero, not a gay Ranchero. This guy is still going. This is a 1960s record, or he was going before the pandemic. Anyway, back to the Pi, and this is contemporary with the Melody Makers and similar models from Phillips. It is a British design, I believe. I've seen quite a few of these around, and they go for a reasonable amount of money, but this one is in pretty poor condition. The dial isn't sitting properly, well, it's fallen off actually, and it doesn't have the knobs. We'll see what we can do with this one. It's, yeah, as I say, in pretty poor condition colour wise, but a bit of wet and dry 2000 grit will hopefully bring it back to life. I bought this not because I need another B15. I have plenty of these. In fact, I have around about 20, and I've sold a few off or given quite a few away. But this is the very rare Electrosound version. AWA sold these as the Radiola in the 1960s, in fact right way through to 1972, and early on they branded them Westinghouse, and Westinghouse dealers sold them in their retail outlets, and Email also got in on the act with the Electrosound. So Email was an appliance brand. They made stoves and ovens and things like that. I think they also may have made sinks. They were more of a sheet metal company, I guess. And so they obviously contracted AWA to make a radio with their branding on it. This is a Phillips 200, a little bit worse for wear paint wise, but otherwise it's pretty sound without any cracks in it. This was the first plastic transistor radio that Phillips made, I believe, and it is basically the same as their previous leather clad model. Well, actually it does have a bit of a crack in it there, a little bit of a chip out of it, but otherwise it's very nice and very desirable. I have no idea if this works or not. But yeah, unusual dial setup, and the tone controls. So this one is bass, this one's treble, and that's the on-off button, and that's the tone volume control there, which is actually switched, so I'm not quite sure how this works. Around the time that Ranchero, the B15, the AWA 455 were around, the Japanese were beginning to invade the Australian market. This one is, I believe, from about 1964, although it might be a little bit earlier or a little bit later. It does have the amplifier module from the T100 and the later R100, but the front end looks a little bit different. It's a really, really good performer. It came with batteries, so this is probably one of the best radio performers that I have here at the moment. It brings in ABC Radio Melbourne really, really strongly without any interference or anything. Bit of a strange get, this one, because I wasn't particularly looking for it and I didn't see it on the list when I was doing the website. So yeah, a bonus all round, and it was cheap too. Has been modified a little bit. The battery case obviously was damaged at some stage. There's a key that unlocks the battery cover, and it's been replaced by a piece of metal and a couple of screws, but they've done a nice neat job, so I'm not complaining about that. And it's a nice piece to show off people. This is a Panasonic DR22. Was made around about 76, 77, 78. This was what I really, really wanted at the auction, and no one else bid it against me, so I got it for a song. It didn't work very well at all. Some friends came over yesterday and they wanted to see it working or wanted to play with it, so we just took the back and front covers off it. It's a clamshell type arrangement. The chassis is actually on the middle section, like the other 600 one, which I did, it's a GX 600, I did a few months back. This one, the aerial, the range, the direction finder aerial, that spinny thing on the top, is in excellent condition. No broken shaft or anything like that. And once we'd cleaned all the pots up and worked out how to wire it up without reassembling it, it's come to life and it sounds pretty good. It's become louder and louder as time wore on. Obviously the capacitors were reforming, but I will recap it at some stage. I don't know that it's as good a performer as the other 17 transistor one, which I did a few weeks back and got at the deceased estate. I suspect this came from that same deceased estate because it has the service manual with it. And let me tell you, it is a nightmare to tune up a little bit. Well, not a nightmare, but very, very tedious arrangement because it's got 8 bands on it. Now, the piece de la resistance, this little Peter Pan. This is my first Peter Pan because they're very, very expensive and highly desirable. They were made in the same fashion as the Astor Mickeys of the time, the rounded ones. This one is, as I say, a Peter Pan. It's a pretty basic set. It's got the speaker behind the dial. There was also a National, which is the Adelaide company that Astor took over, in white with a different dial on it. But that unfortunately went for a huge amount of money. And I paid, well, I guess not over the odds, but a little bit of money. This was the most expensive by far radio that I bought. So yes, very nice, desirable, very clean, nicely polished up. It's got everything going for it. And it even works apparently, so bonus. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoy this video and all the radios that I bought on Saturday. There's a couple more which I'll show you at some stage, which I have in my possession for fixing for a friend. They're quite nice radios as well. Should I say? No, I'll keep you in suspense. You'll just have to watch and find out what they are in a couple of weeks. Enjoy the rest of the week, and I'm signing off. Bye.